My name is Julian Sands. I play a character called the Warlock.
And how would you describe the Warlock? Who is he?
He's a man in black, and he comes from the 17th century to 20th century downtown Los Angeles, and he's malevolent. He is a malevolent person.
What is his relationship with Redfern? What has happened between the two that causes Redfern to track him down?
I don't know. I think he had. I think he took possession of Redfern's wife and dismembered her in a ritual, a sort of Manson-like ritual, and I think that's what Redfern's gripe against the Warlock is. That's why he chases him.
Do you see any similarities between the two characters, between Redfern and the Warlock?
No.
Okay. Why does he come to the present day? What is his quest?
Oh, he's escaped capital punishment at a witch trial, and he is spirited to the 20th century to be even more malevolent than he was in the 17th century. But he's entertaining with his malevolence. He's funny.
His ultimate goal here
is the thwarting of creation itself, in true sort of comic strip style.
Would you repeat that again, please?
His mission is to thwart creation. That is his mission.
And how will he go about doing that?
He has to he has to reassemble the Devil's Bible, which cannot be destroyed but is distributed in various places. And if it's reassembled and various magical spells said, then creation is thwarted. Well, where I'm from in England, in the north of England, certainly in the 17th century, witchcraft was rife. And I can remember that the schools I used to go to as a child were constantly being exorcised because things were always going bump. Things were very spooky. I've certainly had this conversation with friends and with colleagues frequently in the last 2 months, but you see, one of the reasons I wanted to be an actor was to do different things, and I was doing a film in Poland before the end of last year, December, for Krzysztof Zanussi, which was the most sort of substantial and dramatic thing I'd ever been involved with, and to do something which was so purely an entertainment, and where the production values were all orientated around that was refreshing. I find this very refreshing and enjoyable to work on. And playing a bad guy is, even if it's a cartoon bad guy, is fun and makes a change from playing sort of romantic lead characters who one way or another are pretty much the same. And if you ask a writer, if you can find one to work for you at the moment, to write a romantic lead, they're going to come up with a similar formula. But ask them to write a Warlock, and then it gets more interesting. I mean, every character is different. I was being slightly flipped when I was talking about romantic leads being similar and villains being villains. I've been offered villains before, but it was particularly the attributes of the Warlock which appealed on this. So I might play other villains for other reasons other than being villainous. Similarly, it's not something I like to make decisions about in advance. A script comes in or an idea suggested, and if it sort of clicks and makes sense in the circumstances, then it could become something I would want to do.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Arnold Kopelson. I am the executive producer of Warlock. You are on the set. We are in Santa Paula, California, on a farm, and we are filming a very exciting segment of this movie about a male witch, which stars Julian Sands as the Warlock. This project came to me 2.5 years ago when the writer, David Toohey, who had not been produced yet as a writer, brought to me the first 14 pages of the Warlock screenplay, as well as his concept of what he wanted to do with it. I had him give me an outline of the balance of the screenplay as he saw it, as it would be if he had finished it. And I asked him to write more because his writing talent was so exciting. He eventually finished the screenplay, and we have been in I guess, a development stage on this film for approximately 2.5 years, during which time, of course, I had the tremendous opportunity of producing Platoon, which took up much of my time and didn't let me devote myself to the Warlock. We're now very much into production. We're in our 5th week, and it is truly one of the most exciting films that I have ever been involved with. It is exciting because it is different. The world has never seen a movie about a male witch. This is an evil witch, and he is looking for the devil's Bible, and he's been sent through time, and he is now in the 20th century, but comes from the 17th century. And if he is able to put together the devil's Bible, he will be able to recreate the world in the image of the devil. He is pursued through time by Richard E. Grant, who is the witch hunter who wants to bring him back to justice and have him executed back in New England in 1692. Somewhere along the way, they meet Laurie Singer, who plays Cassandra. And Cassandra has a curse placed upon her by the Warlock, where she ages 20 years for each day that she is alive. So in 4 days, she will be gone and out of this world because of old age. There is a liaison between the witch hunter, Richard Grant, and Laurie Singer, who's playing Cassandra. And they are pursuing the Warlock for their respective reasons. And then, of course, during the movie, the tables are turned where the Warlock is pursuing them because they have found part of the Bible. Well, in Julian Sands, we were looking for someone that would not be perceived initially as an evil person. Julian's last film was Room with a View, which was a totally different role for him. Steve Miner perceived that Julian had the edge of being terrifying, and it was Steve's concept to bring in Julian, and of course I supported it and went along with it. I think it was a terrific assessment of his talent by Steve Miner, and it has proved out. The rushes that we've been looking at, which are our daily photography, is terribly exciting. Richard Grant, on the other hand, was a whole other experience. We wanted a British actor, and Steve and I read and interviewed almost every available English actor in America, either situated in California or New York, that whole acting pool, and somehow we didn't find what we wanted. And Steve and I went over to London, and we interviewed and had over 60 actors read for the role. And Richard's performance was electrifying, where we instantly gravitated toward having him. And we made the decision right on the spot to have him join us in the movie, which is terribly exciting because he had only done one other film before, which is With Nail and I, which is now in release and getting terrific reviews. But this film has changed his life, and it's terribly exciting to watch the metamorphosis of a young actor from England coming into Hollywood and becoming a star. He is a major star. He eats up the screen when he's on it. It's terribly exciting watching him. And the two of them play very well with Laurie Singer, our magnificent, beautiful leading lady. She just looks wonderful. We're excited to have her. She is Cassandra, everything that we envisioned, and it's just an exciting movie. Steve Miner has had a major success with New World Pictures. New World is the financier and the domestic distributor of the film, and it is through New World that my own company, Interocean Film Sales, is licensing the film throughout the balance of the world. Steve directed House and Soul Man for New World, which were major financial successes for that company. And because of Bob Ramey, who is the chairman and chief executive officer of New World's suggestion that I looked very carefully into working with Steve, did we get together. Our first meeting was a disaster. The two of us met with 3 other people, and Steve very quickly told me that he didn't really like the screenplay and wanted to make some changes. I had been on the project for 1.5 years at that time. I had just come off Platoon, and of course I felt very strong about where I was in the production of this film. And we just didn't make it in that first meeting. And it was very interesting because about 6 months later, I reassessed Steve's ability to direct. I again looked at the films he had directed, and I said, this is the man that I really want to make this film. And we got together, just the two of us alone, and we had a terrific rapport. And that was followed by our trip to London when we went off to cast Richard E. Grant. And since that moment, we've had a wonderful working relationship.
David Toohey, writer, creator. Writer.
Tell us how the whole project began.
The project began one day out of my pool. I'm thinking like trying to come up with a good story that'll just make me a lot of bucks. But then I came up with a few things, but I said, no. I want to explore the area of witchcraft because it's so wide open for dramatic purposes. There's a lot of grist for the creative mill. A lot of it is contradictory. You'll find things when you investigate witch lore that one will say A, another will say B. So that's kind of good for a writer, in that you aren't locked into anything specific. It is wide open, and I just knew it would make for a good, dramatic, and possibly horrifying movie. I hooked up with Arnold Kobelson, our executive producer, early on, and he liked the pitch. It was only in pitch form. I had nothing on paper. And Arnold saw the merits of the story. He and I went around hand in hand to the studios, to maybe a half dozen studios, pitched the story, took 20 minutes, and universally we got turned down flat everywhere we went. Of course, this was before Arnold had gone off to do Platoon. He was trying to explain to people in the Bodnaz session of these pitches about Platoon before I would do my Warlock pitch. And their eyes sort of glassed over because no one at the time wanted to do a Vietnam film. But Arnold has a good nose for sniffing out commercial material and or important material. And he went off and produced Platoon, and shortly thereafter we set up Warlock. The Warlock's mission is to recover the 3 parts of the Bible, the Grand Grimoire. Those 3 parts over the years have been divided, or the Grand Grimoire has been divided into 3 equal parts by the church elders of the 1600s. However, over the course of the years, the 3 various parts made their way off church grounds, off hallowed ground, and now they are scattered about the country. 1 part in Los Angeles, a 2nd part in Colorado, a 3rd part back in Boston. It is the Warlock's mission then to reclaim all 3/3 of the Grand Grimoire and reunite Satan's Bible. What happens then is the book recombined issues forth the lost name of God. The lost name of God is something that historians have been trying to track down for who knows how long. And once the name is reclaimed, the Warlock can then issue the name, can speak the name of God in reverse, and thus he will reverse creation itself. He will unravel life itself, as we say in the script. What I've discovered is I came across it in my own research. And to this day, I am the only one on the set who knows what the lost name of God is. And I will trust no one with the name, lest they, in their dreams, speak the lost name of God in reverse and undo all of us. We simply want to finish this film before that happens. Actually, the last day on the set, I will go up to Julian's ear, Julian who plays our Warlock, and I will whisper into his ear what the lost name of God really is. 7 letters, 1 name. And then he can think about uttering it. But before he utters it, of course, our heroes do him in. So no, I'm not going to tell you. When the Warlock comes to the 20th century, he is more or less imprisoned in these. These are, we call them thumb locks, but actually they're thumb and toe locks. They combine to Julian's, they couple to his thumb here, and this would cross over, and this would attach to his opposite toe. The idea behind this was that once you, it wasn't so much a physical restraining device as it was a supernatural one. If you couple a witch's thumbs to his toes, then his magic has nowhere to go. Magic cycles in back on itself. And then he is virtually helpless. So as long as the Warlock is restrained by these, he has no magical powers. But once he's free of these, watch out. This is the witch compass. I discovered in my research that witch's blood has a certain, was thought to have a certain recombinant capacity, that it liked to seek its own. Witches were not thought to bleed like normal people. They bled less readily. So knowing that, I surmise that if you had to track down the Warlock, and if you had a sample of his blood through whatever means, that you could construct a compass-like device when blood was added to the pointer, to the cup of the pointer, would enable you to track down the whereabouts of the Warlock. So in other words, when blood is added to the cup here, it would indicate, point up his direction. The quicker the needle would swing, the closer would the Warlock be. The slower the needle swings, the more distant is he. And this is the device that Redfern uses, that he brings to the 20th century to enable him to track down the Warlock. The Warlock crashes through Cassandra's bedroom window. Crashes through her living room window. Cuts himself on shards of glass. These dry. Later on, Redfern scrapes the shards of glass down, adds them to his own vial, rehydrates them with simple tap water, and voila, he's got a thin version of the Warlock's blood. Precious. I remember someone from New World, our financing company, was on the set the first day in Boston. Quite familiar with the script, but wasn't familiar with our actors. And it was a good day into the shooting before he realized that Julian Sands was not the good guy. That Julian Sands, in fact, is our bad guy, the Warlock. Bad news in shoes, as we call it. Sometimes bad news without shoes. Yeah, it's a curious choice. The audience may not know for the first 10 or 15 minutes of the film that Redfern, our dark, glowering character, is the good guy, and that Julian, that the Warlock, he of blonde hair and fair face, is the bad guy. And that's something that we're intrigued by ourselves, and it's an obvious choice on our, not an obvious choice, but a clear-cut choice on our part. We had well, initially, yes, we had envisioned the Warlock as the dark one and Redfern as the fair one. But we said if we reverse that expectation, then that's just that much more fun for the audience. And we decided to go with it. Working with Steve, it's been mostly a joy, and it's been a real creative charge. I'd done 2 or 3 drafts of the script before he joined the party, and then I did 2, 3, 4 more with him at the helm. And it's worked out because he and I see the project eye to eye. We share the same vision, and he's made it a better project for what he's brought to it. I think he makes me look in the ideal relationship, and I think ours is close to that. The director makes the writer look like a better writer. The writer makes the director look like a better director. And I think that's what we've achieved with our relationship. it's been good. It's been a learning process, and I've enjoyed it. I think he has. I hope he has. Maybe he hasn't. I don't know. Ask him.
Steve Miner, I'm producing and directing Warlock.
What attracted you to the script? Why did you want to do this?
Well, I thought it was a chance. I liked the script. It was very good. It was a page turner. It was I thought a story that would entertain, and it was a chance to do visually interesting material. When I read the first draft, I was really impressed. I thought it was an excellent story and good characters and a good curve to the story, and for the most part, I thought it worked really well. And so when I became involved with the project, I went back to the first draft with David, Toohey, the writer, and just adapted a little bit from there. The ways that I thought, talked to David about the ways I thought the story should go, because the third act I felt had some problems when it was with the original conception. And David and I worked together pretty closely on it, with he and I talking over ideas and coming up with certain plans and exchange of ideas, and he was very receptive. And also, I think because we stayed close to the original concept of the movie, was very receptive to working hard and making it better. And he did. He did a great job. Came up with great ideas. One way to go wrong in conceiving a project and writing a script and getting it close to production is to limit yourself by what you think you can do, either by money, what you can afford, or what is possible to execute. And I think if we start eliminating ourselves at that stage, then the product in the end will suffer. And what I find fun to do is let's let our imagination go. And David Toohey has what I think an excellent imagination, and has a certain bent on the world that very few people that I've ever met have. So what I encourage them to do is not worry about A, how much it costs, or B, if it's possible to execute. Think of something really cool and write it down, and we'll take it from there. And I think that resulted in some scenes that I hope are different and fun to watch. And you can almost always figure out a way to do a scene. You know, with all the tools that we have at our all the tools that we have at our command now, with the different processes of special effects and all that we've learned in watching other filmmakers make films and stealing their ideas, we can execute almost anything these days. The most important job for a director, I think, is not getting in the way of actors and trying to use them and their abilities to the best, and just not getting in their way. And I think one of the worst ways to try to direct is by example, and most actors know, or all actors know that too. You know, for me, I think it's a blueprint for disaster to give actors line readings, or tell them they have to step here, or they got to stand here, or they got to walk there. And Julian tried to trap me in a subway station, asked me to demonstrate how I would do his magic trick, but I didn't fall for it. Well, for makeup effects, Carl Fullerton and I had worked together before, and he has one of the best reputations in the business. His work is impeccable, and he's a great guy, and he's very talented and very ingenious and inventive and fun to work with. And you know that he was my first and last choice. The mechanical effects were very complicated. We need someone really skilled and very well versed in all different kinds of mechanical effects, from flying to reverse gags to any number of different mechanical things we had to do. And Ken Pepio has done a lot of that stuff, and he's very hardworking and very inventive and very smart, and he's a great guy. And then with the optical effects, I just talked with a lot of people, and the optical effects house that I worked with in the past for the past couple of films were all booked up, so I had to find someone new. And Barry Nolan and his group of Perpetual Motion impressed me with with their all-around ability and enthusiasm for the project, and I chose them for very much the same reason I chose the other two. House is a film I wanted to do because it was an inventive, funny script. I felt I could take this piece of material and do successfully what I felt not done. It's been failed at many times, which is to combine horror and humor. And there was a tone there in that script that I felt would work really well for an audience. And I had to have daily meetings with the crew and the actors to explain hyperspace and the kind of reality we were going for, because everybody thought I was a little bit nuts, but as I was. But Bill Catt threw himself into it and did, I think, a great job on that film, and everybody worked real hard. And I'm kind of proud of the film. I think it's an unusual film. I think visually it's interesting, and I think that the tone is fairly successful. It's wild, but I think it works. And so it was a film I wanted to do because I always thought I could do humor, but never had gotten a chance, just having done the Friday the 13th, a couple of Friday the 13th films. And so I wanted to do that with that, to do some humor. And I thought I could get a film made that at least had some horror in it. It was kind of a horror film, but I could slip in the humor. No one would know until I had a screening and people started laughing. And that film led to Soul Man, a script that was sent to me, which is a very funny script, and I thought had some interesting things to it. I still think it's an unusual film in its subject matter and its handling of it, and which was basically just a straight comedy, and had some very funny things in it. And it was again a very good script, and I think it worked out pretty well. People thought it was funny. And I had really planned on doing a comedy next, but for various reasons, a couple that I were involved in weren't getting made. And when the Warlock script came along, I figured, well, I think I can do this. I'd seen Richard in With Nail and I. In fact, my assistant came in one morning to the office and said, "You've got to go see this film. You should see Richard Grant. He'd be a great Warlock." And I went in, and this is when we were first getting involved with Warlock, and I went to see the film that afternoon, and I was just blown away by his performance, and he was in my mind as a Warlock. Well, then I also had always been thinking of Julian Sands as a Warlock, and for me he was a better Warlock because he was the antithesis of what people would expect the Warlock to be. Then I convinced the studio to send me to London to cast when we had the Warlock. We had Julian Sands and we had Laurie Singer as the girl, and we needed a Redfern. And I said, we can't hire some good American actor and make him talk in a British accent, and I really think the way to go is send me to London and let me see because they have great actors there, as we do here, but they're very well trained there. Send me there. Let's just see every good actor we can see in London for 3 or 4 days. And they agreed. So Arnold Copelson and I went to London and saw a lot of very, very good actors. And Richard Grant came in, and because he was on the list of who's around and who are the good actors in London and England. And I said, yeah, let's see him, even though I originally said, well, he's probably more a Warlock. And he came through the door, and it was Redfern. For me, right from that moment, I wanted him to play Redfern. Well, it's a comic book in that it plays a lot with reality and a lot with fantasy, and it has bigger than life characters and bigger than life situations, and bigger than life problems, and it starts and ends when you sit down. You sit down and you watch it from beginning to end, and it's got a story curve, and it's like a comic book in that way. And but I hope it's played real enough that the suspension of disbelief is such that you believe it's real while it's happening, and that it's a fun roller coaster ride, and that we keep the story slightly ahead of the audience, enough to keep them interested and seated. I think that for me, and maybe other people will disagree with me and say I've never done it very well, but I think that that the scary sort of part of filmmaking. Making things scary, making an audience jump is the easiest thing to do. I think that's the easiest type of entertaining to do. And maybe, it's very hard to do it really well, but as far as if I were a beginning director, I would want to first do a horror type film, because I think it's fairly easy to get people scared or on the edge of their seat or to pay attention to what's going to happen next, and it's very easy to make them react, because all you got to do is jump out of the closet and go boo, and they'll jump in their seats. And not that they're silly or anything, but it's just there's certain formulas for doing it. I think that if one can combine that with a good storytelling, good visuals, and some acting and some good writing, then that starts to make it harder.
I grew up in Swaziland, which was an English colony up until 1968, which is in southern East Africa, next door to Mozambique. And the language has many clicks and sounds. If you want to say, no, I don't want to speak to you anymore, you say, so, and I grew up learning to speak that.
How difficult was it to learn the language?
Well, it's, if you've learned it since you were very small, it's not really a problem. So it's very easy, and it's a very nice language to speak and very physical in your mouth, and sounds very positive.
Switching back to today's action, how difficult is it to act to special effects that aren't there?
It's like being a kid, I suppose. You say, here come the guns. And you make what they have to stop me doing, and the stunt people have started doing it now as well, is making sounds that if you hit somebody, you kind of go, or like, because then that's the way of making it, you feel as if it's happened to you. So they keep on having to do all that without making the kind of, all that stuff. So it's great fun, get paid for it as well.
Tell a little bit about the fights and what it's like dealing with bits and pieces of the fight.
Well, it's much easier because if I've done stage fighting before, where you have to, rehearse for 5 or 6 weeks so that it looks believable. If you do Hamlet or something like that. Whereas in this thing, you have the luxury of, if I hit you, I can do like that, and you don't necessarily see somebody getting hit. Whereas on the stage, you've got to try, and you've got to go all the way from the beginning of the sequence right to the end. Whereas in this thing, it's all cut up, so the chances of getting hurt or stabbed or having your neck broken is far less. And it looks better. And they add sound effects as well, so that all the stuff that I do when I sort of go, they add sort of like, I told that if they cut somebody's throat, they use a knife through a cabbage, because that's what I've told. I don't slit anybody's throat, but that's what they've told me. Yes, I think his idea in the casting was that because Julian looks so extraordinary, and he wanted the satanic character to look as attractive as possible, and as if he could, you'd like to have dinner with him or something, or introduce him to your family, and that I was supposed to look like a sort of old scuzzball from nowhere, so that whether it'll work or not, I don't know, but I hope it does.
How would you describe your character? Who is he?
I think he's very honest, loyal, a normal kind of person that doesn't get on the news, who ends up taking a mission in his life because his family's been killed. So it's not Charles Bronson in Death Wish. Well, maybe it is. But it's an ordinary man who has been forced out of circumstances to take revenge and to do something outside of his ken. So I'm sure he's a farmer and wouldn't be chasing and trying to kill people at all. I want good for the world, and he wants everything uncreated, and I just want it to be a good place to be in, where people don't go around burning or strangling each other or eating small children. I think all the things that a normal person wants, that isn't power crazed, and he obviously is. So no, I don't think I would get on with him at all.
Are there characteristics you both share, though?
Oh yes, we're both obsessed, and with finding each other or getting away from each other. So yes, we do. Two sides of the same coin. I should imagine there's similar terror and confusion and excitement of coming from the 17th century into the 20th and finding that in many ways you guys seem to be leading a lifestyle in advance of Europe, just in terms of what you have and the access to things that you have here.
You had mentioned coming from Africa that you thought the United States had an enormous big sky. That was a comment you had made before.
Yes,
And I find
and
that's
big money. That's the thing that strikes me more than anything. There seems to be more money here than any other place that I've ever seen. It strikes me that you're like the Romans of this century. You're the biggest, the most powerful, the most self-confident. In Africa, the sky is very big and the landscape seems, vast, but America, it confounds that proportion. Just everything is much bigger, from motor cars to portions of food. The way people are. In England, everyone's much more. How do you do? It's hi. It's, all good, best foot forward. That's what it feels like. So I'm speaking like a schmucky tourist, as though I've just come from Disneyland. So you'll have to forgive me.
beef jerky. You describe your character as beef jerky. Would you enlarge on that?
Well, when I went to the audition for this part in London, Arnold Copeland, the producer, said to me, he said, why did you see this part? And I said, well, I think he's like beef jerky. And they looked at me, as a man who's very contained, taut, skinny, and tough. He's not going to be swayed from anything. And I knew that I think it's a Red Indian thing to eat dried meat like that. And there's a similar thing in Africa, but it's called by a different name. So they got that. It was a little odd, and I've been teased by various people saying, oh God, here comes beef jerky. So a beef jerky performance coming up.
It's very rare to have the writer on the set. Dave has been on the set. Has that been positive or negative?
Oh, I find it incredibly positive, because you can you can read something and think that you understand it, and then he says, well, if you just put the emphasis on this word, or this is what I mean about that scene, it can be very simple, but completely change something or make it much easier, which is, I think that's a great luxury to have. And he's also very amenable to change. I mean, if you drop a word, he would say, could I just change this bit round here because it feels better to say this way. He's, sometimes you say, no, that's wrong, and he'll give you a reason why. And that's what more you can't ask for than that.
Could you just say it's a great luxury to have a writer on the set?
I would say so, yes.
No, would you say that so we have that on tape?
Oh, I think it's a great luxury to have a writer on the set. My respect for them is higher than almost anything. Because all my job begins and ends with what they've written down, what they've created.
Okay.
Scenes that I found difficult were when we were driving along in the car for the first time in the Mojave Desert. My character had never been in a car before, and I had been questioned by Laurie Cassandra about my wife and my past, and doing those things where you have to get very emotional and then cut it all off. I think those are difficult, but every scene is difficult in some way. When they shot the weather vane coming down towards me, I assumed that they'd put the weather vane between my legs and then pull it backwards and do it in reverse. Like usually there's people sort of walking upside down like Fred Astaire did in that scene, dancing. They didn't do that. They have the thing on a very strong wire, and then have the vane up just out of the camera's reach. And then on a cue they say it's coming down now, and they pull it, and you don't need any acting required here. You jump out of the way when you see that thing coming towards you. So that's great fun to do, and I'm sure it'll look very good. Growing up in an African country, there's so much folklore and interest in old legends and stories that are passed down orally. We believed in all of that, and there's a certain character called Itokolosh, which they say exists for naughty children underneath all beds, and I'm sure you have an American equivalent, and they used to say, so we used to be warned off and threatened with this Tokolosh thing. We always used to check underneath our beds. And there's still a tradition now of rural Swazis coming in from the countryside, living in mud huts or grass huts and sleeping on mats, that when they come and live in the towns, they put concrete bricks underneath their beds, and so that the bed is raised off the ground, so that this Tokolosh character can't come and get them, which is, it's a real fear. So, you know, you grow up believing all that, and there's snakes around and animals. It's easy to believe in all these things.